Hi there, this is Jeanette for Whimsy Stamps. Today's video is a video that features a new clear stamp set from Whimsy. This is Mom's Layered Flowers, and I created two videos. This is the first one, and I'll be sharing how to use dye ink and distress markers to create this look. Now I will be showing you how to do this blue one, but the orangey red one you just saw is done in the exact same way, just with different inks, and I will link everything below this video on YouTube. I'll be using my new Misty tool. This was the first time I was sort of trying it out, and what I did was I positioned the large flower stamp, and then I stamped it with some blue ink. This is Blue Jay ink, and it didn't stamp properly, so I just sort of re-inked it and stamped it again. And that's the great thing about using the Misty. You certainly don't need to use a Misty to create this look. So then I just masked that larger flower off, and now I'm positioning the smaller one, and I'm doing the same thing, inking it up and pressing down. So I soon realized that you have to press a little bit harder with the Misty to get a really nice impression, especially on this watercolor paper that I'm using. So now I will ink up that big one. In between, I am cleaning off the ink and letting it dry so that I don't make smudges on my paper when I'm laying it on the paper to position it. Put that big one up in the corner again. So this stamp set comes with two flowers, and each flower has an outline stamp and then sort of a fill-in stamp. So you'll see what I'm going to do with the second part. Now here I almost forgot to mask that flower off, so try to be vigilant when you're doing it. I often mess up my cards because I forget to mask. So I'll just use that same mask, and now I can stamp that off and clean it off and then dry it off. And I'm going to put another one up here on the top. Now when I did my first card, I spent more time sort of figuring out the layout, and right now I am just sort of doing the same layout. I'm not changing anything. So this is one of those filler stamps where it fills in the center of the flower. You have to align it, and then you can stamp it up. And I'm using the same ink, this Blue Jay ink. It's a deep blue ink, and if you want to deepen the color, you just re-ink it and stamp it again. I'm going to switch to this larger flower while the smaller one dries off. I'm going to do the same thing. So while you certainly can do this technique using just your mounting blocks and maybe even a stamp positioner, using the Misty, I have to say, makes the process a lot easier. So that smaller stamp is dry now, so I'm going to be inking that up. So it's just sort of a back and forth, giving your stamps time to dry. This one here, I decided to just leave it with the one sort of layer of ink. It sort of gave a lighter color, and I liked that effect. I'm going to switch over to this part of the card now. Now you don't have to do all your flowers the same colors. You certainly could mix them up and make it multicolored. I just sort of wanted a two-tone or monotone, I guess, color. You're going to see that I'm going to be using another ink in a little while, but it's still sort of in the blue family. So now I'm just switching where my magnets are, and I will be sort of filling in the gaps here. So I'm going to be using another ink, and this is Malibu ink, or that's the name of the shade, And this is, they're both dye inks, so they're not going to react with water, which is important for what we're going to be doing later on. So here I am inking up the inside part, and I did that 2 times just to deepen it up a little bit. And I liked how the 2 inks sort of played off each other. I thought that was really pretty. So we're just here on the final flower here. Again, I'm doing it in the lighter blue, the sort of aqua blue color. I'll clean that off. And I am now going to add color to the inside part of the flowers, and this is just a distress marker. This is in Wild Honey, and I'm just dotting in the center with it. I'm not being too careful, but trying to make sure that the center is pretty well full. And then just so that you have a little bit of contrast there, I'm adding some dots with Rusty Hinge. So I'm not coloring it in, I'm just dotting it. So now I have a Zig Clean Color real brush marker, and it is in the color, actually I'm not sure what the color is, but I will link it below. It's the light blue. So I'm just adding that around the sides of the flowers, and then I'm taking a paintbrush that's dampened with some water, and I'm just blending out the color. So that's why it was important for me to use the dye ink at the beginning, so that when I did this step and added water to the card, I wasn't going to get all kinds of ink sort of running together and sort of messing everything up. So that is why I used the dye ink at the beginning, so that I could later on use the watercolor. So the brush tip on these markers is so fine and it's so flexible that it's super easy to get into every nook and cranny around the flowers. And I ended up switching to this sort of water tank brush. It was just easier. There's already water in the tank, and it just kept the bristles of the brush a little more wet. It was easier to work with. So that's why I sort of switched up midway through. And I do blend out the water in towards the center, just to make sure everything is nice and smooth and nicely blended. And I'm just using this one color of the Zig markers. You could certainly go over it with a deeper blue if you wanted to make the intensity a little bit darker. In some areas I am just coloring in and I'm not blending with water, and that makes the color a little bit more concentrated, a little more strong. You can see I'm just sort of blending and then pulling everything towards the center, blending it out. I've made Mother Day cards with this, but you could certainly switch up some of the sentiments that are in the set to create a card for another occasion. You can even stamp other sentiments from Whimsy into the middle there. You could use this as a background for some of the image, the figures. There's a lot of possibilities with this set. I think it's really, really flexible, and it's really great to have in your sort of collection of stamps. I'm almost finished now. I'm doing sort of the last little bit here. So although I'm using this water tank brush, I am still sort of dipping it in water and wiping off the excess color and drying it on a paper towel. So I'm still using it like it's a paintbrush. So you just blend away and make sure that you have no lines, everything is really pretty and blended. And then you're going to need to let this dry for a good while, which I did. Going to stamp the sentiment now. So this is the large mother stamp, and then there's a tiny little sentiment, so I thought I would stamp them in 2 different colors. For this one I wanted it to be in black, so I'm just using my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. You can use whatever ink you want. Just make sure your paper is nice and dry. I got a little ink on the cover there, so I was wiping it off. And this is what I find great, is that you can go over the sentiment again. I'm always messing up my sentiments, and this really helps make it nice and crisp and really dark. And for this other second part, I am going to use that Blue Jay, that dark blue ink, to stamp it. And again, everything is so easy to line up and restamp with this Misty. Here's my card base. I'm making an A2 size card. I'll just add adhesive, and of course every time I film a video I run out of adhesive in that adhesive gun, so I had to switch it up with another one. So that's that blue card, and here is the first one I made, slightly different sentiments. Thanks for watching. A full list of supplies and links can be found below this video on YouTube.